Greetings and welcome to Growth Hacking Secrets. I'm your host, Muhammad Siddique from Atlanta, Georgia, and the co author of New Success Secrets, available on Amazon. On this special episode, we have a special guest, Grant Parr. Grant is the host of 90% Mental Podcast. Please join me to give a warm welcome to our guest, Grant Parr. Grant, welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah,
How are you?
excellent. How about you?
Oh, I'm doing really good. I feel really good. Beginning of the week, feeling pretty good.
Excellent. That's always good to hear that. So, Grant, let me start with this. Where were you? What happened? Who you were surrounded with that inspired you to get started with your podcast, 90% mental?
The podcast itself was interesting because it spawned off out of my grad school project. So I was either going to do a thesis when I was going back to school to get my master's in sports psychology. So it was either doing a thesis or a special project. So talking to my professor, my advisor, and he kind of coached me into thinking about doing a podcast. And I've never heard of a podcast back then, never been on a podcast. But it was really funny that 20 years prior, when I was going to school initially for my bachelor's, I wanted to be a radio broadcaster, TV broadcaster. So I majored in media arts communications. So it was really funny that after all those years, I found my passion as a mental performance coach, and I'm also hosting my own show. So when I started to do 3 episodes for my project, I realized after I graduated, I should keep this thing going as far as my brand and getting to expose and share people's stories. So I started doing more, and it wasn't until the 10th episode that I started to listen to podcasts. So I'm like, you know what? I probably should listen to a podcast to see if I'm doing this right. So I did that, and I kept on learning, and I wasn't too far off. And so I think I'm about 170 episodes in right now. Hopefully I'll be done probably with 200 by the end of the year.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Tell us more about what does 90% mental mean?
Well, actually, it's a famous quote that came from an American baseball catcher. His name's Yogi Berra, and he's known to say really funny, outlandish, crazy things. But as a mental performance coach, and I think society understands how important the mental game is. And so I think whether if it's 90% mental, 80% mental, we know that when you're performing anything, it's more mental than it is physical. You could be the best athlete, the best performer on the field, in the pool, in the court, but in the moment, if you don't have your mental game, if you don't have what it takes mentally to get through that moment, then how good are you? So 90% mental was just something that I took from Yogi Berra, and I bring on athletes, coaches, sports psychologists, authors, sporting executives to talk about the mental game.
Wonderful, wonderful. That's great. So we learned something from you. That's why we have you as a guest.
All
So,
right.
yeah, Grant, based on your experience of doing a podcast and running a business, what are the top 3 missteps to avoid?
Well, I think have a plan. Like, understand your plan. I think and allow yourself to be vulnerable. When you're starting off a podcast, when you're starting off a business, there's so many things that you're going to be challenged with. But you got to trust yourself. You got to be vulnerable in the moment. Allow yourself to show up in the moment. And also, don't say yes to everything. As much as that you want to get all these people on your show, opportunities to have these sponsors, you're growing your business. Like, you have to learn to say no. So you can't say yes to everything. And I think when you first start out anything, yes feels good, right? So you got to learn how to say no and feel good about it when you do say it.
Yeah. One more.
One more misstep. I think when you're starting off, don't try to do it alone. Make sure you have a good support system or a good mentor or mentors. Starting off anything, a podcast, starting off your own business can be lonely and it can be scary. So when you have good people around you, and you can't get where you want to go by yourself.
Yeah.
There's always going to be somebody there that's going to help you or has guided you. And more often than not, it's a lot of people. So make sure that you surround yourself with the right people.
Yeah, wonderful. This is great. So, on your podcast, 90% mental, what are your top three success secrets that kept you going to 170 and probably to 200?
You know what it was? When I first started off, I think what stopped me was, why would somebody want to talk to me? Like, why would somebody spend their time and get on my show and share their story? And I think when I started to get more comfortable with myself, then I started, like, it allowed me to play a bigger game on feeling good to ask, Hall of Fame athletes and, one of the best coaches in college sports. Like, I started to, like, feel comfortable, and the more I was building my rhythm, and that's what it was, is building my confidence, building my rhythm, that when I started to get these signature, class A type of people, then it just motivated me. It kept me like wanting to get more and more and more. And so, and then I learned how to put a best practice in place in reaching out to people and utilizing people's networks. And now it's fairly easy to get really awesome clients or guests on my show. But it was kind of a struggle at first, because I didn't know where I stood. I didn't know how I felt about myself as a host. And then as I started building the confidence, then it became a little bit more easier for me.
Mm-hmm. Give us one more.
I would say that another one, it would be when you're on this show, or when you have a show, and you do a great job with your show as well, there's play big with it. And I say that a lot. And so when I started getting more into it, I started to realize, like, I can take this thing bigger and have fun. I mean, at first it wasn't fun. It seemed like I had this love-hate relationship with doing the editing and publishing and trying to find the talent. But then after I got my rhythm, like I said earlier, and got my confidence, I started to really say, you know what? I'm going to play a big game. I got to understand what that game looks like with my podcast. So now I'm creating some revenue streams. Now there's a potential opportunity of turning one of my podcasts into a TV show. So it's, so when I say play a big game, like, just be vulnerable and trust yourself,
Yeah. So let's talk about your big game. So how someone want to listen to their big game and a 90% mental, how they can outreach to you? I show your website, gamefaceperformance.com.
Yep.
Is that the right place, starting point?
Yeah. If you want to check out my podcast, you'll find it there at gamefaceperformance.com. You can find it on any podcast hosting platform. But if you want to learn more about my brand as a whole, as a mental performance coach, also I'm an author. I'm also a mindset musician, so I create a lot of music for meditation. All of that is at gamefaceperformance.com.
Yeah, gamefaceperformance.com. Great. Is there any other tip you were just meant to share and I didn't ask? Anything else you'd like to share with us?
Usually when I'm on other people's show, there's a similar question I'm always asked, like this, and I will always say this, because maybe I spent a majority of my life playing a very more of a safe, narrow game in my life. And it just wasn't until about 6-7 years ago when I realized that it was time for me to play a big game. So I encourage everyone to be vulnerable, like, really be vulnerable with your life, with your relationships, with your performances, and step up in the moment and play a big game. But first, define what that game looks like to you, and then play it.
That's the key part. First, know what the game look like. Mostly people are playing the game, they don't even know which game they are on. So
right.
Yeah. Great. I like to ask this question to every guest who comes on my show to find out how we are doing. And here's the question. This is like a kind of review for the show. What would you say to your best friend about a growth hacking secret show when I'm not there?
I would say, well, what comes to mind is organized. you're organized, you're authentic and thoughtful and purposeful. I think what you're doing, what you have done for your brand and for other people, encompasses all of that. So again, hacking secrets is a great thing that you're doing.
Yeah, thank you so much for your kind words. Really appreciate it very much. And what would you say as a final word?
Uh, you know what? Stay connected to yourself during these times, and you know what? And feed other people with great energy. Take care of your energy, and this is a time that we keep our light going inside of us, but we share it with the people that need it. So that's my last words.
Wonderful. My last word is go for gamefaceperformance.com. Visit that site and actually check that out so that way you can learn how to play 90% mental game. That's a key part. Thank you so much, Grant Parr, for sharing your wisdom with us today on the behalf of a Growth Hacking Show community and our entire team. We really appreciate you. This is Muhammad Siddique signing off from Atlanta, Georgia. Until the next episode, all good wishes.